Good evening. How's everyone doing? My name is MacKenzie Wilson. Alongside me, back from assignment so soon. I didn't know if I was going to have Chris on the show tonight, but the guy pulled some strings, and here we are. Chris Noble, somewhere in northern Alberta, I would assume, or maybe in central Alberta. I'm actually outside. It's gorgeous out. It was a 30-plus degree day today, Chris, and I think you were moving someone.
Yeah, I was just helping out with some friends getting the
Can you hear me, Chris?
elderly. I can hear you. Can you hear me? Yes?
I can. A little bit delayed,
Okay.
but we're good.
Yeah. So anyway, I was helping someone move their elderly family. So anyway, so we got a good show tonight with some of our admins, and kind of a last minute snuck in the ever so famous Rob Bonnet.
Yeah, that's right. We got we asked some of our mints they wanted to come in on the show. So we've got Trish in the background. Gidra might be able to make an appearance if she can't make it. But it's always good to have different landlords with different experiences to kind of give different perspectives on challenges that we face every day doing this profession of being a landlord as we invest for our future. So without further ado, let's get those fine folks on the show. So let's pull up Trish here.
So Mac, while you're doing
Trish?
that, just letting you know that there seems to be a delay. I don't know if it's on my end or on your end. So.
Okay, well, it's probably on my end because I am tethered off a cell phone connection. So I'll let you guys carry the conversation as best we can. Rob Bonham did disappear, and now I have him back.
Well,
Rob, can you hear us?
Because
I can hear you just fine. Everybody there?
Okay. So
yes.
A little bit of a different. I'm here. Sorry, guys. We'll make this work as best we can. Chris, can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you, Mac.
Uh-oh. This might be a rough show.
So
Okay.
until we can get you closer to some kind of connection,
let's get into some
you're like a
questions
10-second delay in this.
Yeah, it's a long delay, Mac.
Okay. I will come back.
Okay.
I wonder if it's because you're outside, Kenzie.
Okay, I get to host the show until Mac gets back. So there we go. So hey, Rob. So you've got lots of great things going on, and you and I chatted pre-show, and there's some things you wanted to take a different approach to this, trying to drive some landlords back into a better practice, better business practice. And I think we should jump right into that because that was quite exciting. And I know Trish, you and Mac and Gidri had talked earlier about sort of the format to the show, but I think you'll find what Rob's got to say here tonight very interesting because he's actually picking up quite a few clients that are renters. So tell us about this, Rob.
Well, just in the last couple of months, I've been coming across more and more renters. Thankfully, none of these landlords that are acting a bit unscrupulous have been members of ours. But what I've seen is I'm seeing landlords, especially in the southern market, Calgary and south, like High River, Okotoks, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, they're putting their properties up for sale, which is great. We're in here, we're all in this to make money, but then they're not following the rules and the regulations as far as sales go. And I've even seen a couple of them hire lawyers at this point to try and bully the tenants out, not following the regulations. And when I see that happening, I've got to act the same way toward landlords as I do towards unscrupulous tenants. I mean, one bad landlord makes 100 landlords look bad.
Yeah. So what are you seeing in general, Rob, right now with, I understand you're actually got invited for lunch with a law firm because of your background and knowledge.
Yeah, just today I was running across a lot more tenants are starting to look at taking advantage of the Community Information Referral Society, the Law Society, and they're getting free lawyers and free agents. The nice thing about the agents is most of them are social workers. They've got very little experience. But even the law firms now are starting to throw their towels into this because they could see that, a lot's going on in the industry. A lot of tenants are starting to, really push the envelope. And now we've got landlords starting to push the envelope. I think as a group, the landlords, we need to really start taking the high road. We need to start making sure we're following the regulations. One bad landlord is the one that's going to get us on global news, and it's going to make us, it'll reflect on all of us. Suddenly we're all these unscrupulous landlords or unscrupulous agents, or even what you're doing, Chris. They'll start labeling that as unscrupulous just because it's trying to benefit the landlords more than the tenants. So I think what we need to really be pushing towards landlords is, if you have a question, ask, go to the experts, talk to you guys, put it out on the forum. Don't believe what you read on the internet. And just because you hire a lawyer to get your tenant out doesn't mean you're in the right. I mean, I saw 3 cases in the last 30 days where a lawyer has written a bullying letter to the tenants to get them out. And I take a look at the letter and I start laughing, saying, well, none of this is legal. This is just a landlord instructing a lawyer what he wants him to say. And then the tenant sees the logo on top being from a law firm, and their first instinct is to panic. Like, oh my God, a lawyer's saying I'm doing this and this and this. And people need to understand, just because they're a law firm doesn't mean they're operating legitimately. They're being paid to operate the way their client says so.
Right. And with that said, though, given the legal background ever so slight that I have, a lawyer has some responsibility to act within the scope of what the legislation is. And sometimes they step out of that. And I think you're probably the first one to call a lawyer out when they're wrong. And they can be actually brought up before the bar and be held accountable before the Law Society for not acting appropriately.
Oh, 100%. And now that tenants are starting to hire lawyers or agents, the same thing's happening. So all I could say to landlords out there right now is, 1, take the high road. Make sure you're following the regulations. 2, if you've got a tenant that's hired a lawyer, just because they have a lawyer doesn't mean they're in the right. It just means they got smart enough to hire a lawyer. So, I mean, I did notice something in the last several weeks. There was quite a few people on our Facebook page that were taking it upon themselves to go at it alone. And that's admirable. I can never, but like myself, Don, and anybody else that does this for a living, we'll help you best we can. But we're not gonna hold your hand all the way through it. I mean, this is our business. And some of them already saw that it didn't work out for them. Some didn't get the results they wanted or as quick as they wanted. But again, it's not about the evidence. It's all in your presentation. I mean, I had a long conversation with a lawyer today that was hired by a tenant, and the landlord's actually being super reasonable. And after about a half-hour discussion with the landlord or with the lawyer, he's going to go back and have a discussion with his tenants and let them know they don't really have a legal foot to stand on. But he's happy to make the argument for them and get paid. But in the end, it's not about they're going to lose. It's about how badly they're going to lose.
Right. Trish, you're nodding your head lots. Is there some things that you want to have to say here? Because you follow a lot on the page. You're kind of just so people know, Trish is one of our admins. She's behind the scenes. She's the one that helps Mac and I keep things running along with Guidry. And as a result of Trish and Guidry's help, I don't know if everybody realized, I did put a post up. Well, we've hit 3,000 members in our group now. So we are the biggest, the largest, the go-to resource on Facebook for Alberta landlords. And you know what? I'm proud that this has happened the way it has. And you know what? I'm really honored that you guys are a part of it. Rob and Don and Trish and Guidry and Mac and I, and I can go on mentioning some of our other sponsors, and we will as the show goes on. But you know what? We've made this a very solid place to come to for the right information. So sorry, Trish, I kind of went on a rant there, but can you add into what we were talking about?
No, I think it's, first of all, if I was going to go through an eviction, which I've been so blessed and haven't gone through it because I practice good practices, but if I had to go through an eviction, I would definitely hire somebody. There's no way I would go it alone. I just don't have I get too emotionally involved in it. I think that I wouldn't be able to represent myself well. You have to know your limitations. Plus, I also really firmly believe that if you're not sure what you're doing, you hire somebody always.
Right. And you know what, I'll just segue off of that. We've had some people saying, you know what, I've got my RTDS package in, I've got all that, but I'm really feeling uncomfortable about this. And I've helped a couple of people and directed them towards Rob or Brad Langeway with Servit or Don. And I'm saying, look, if you've already done all the work getting your package in, reach out to one of these guys, let them review the package and make the presentation for you. Certainly, there is a little bit of a discount in some sense of cost to you because you've done a bunch of the work and serving of the documents. But Rob and Don will help you out as best they can. And like Rob said earlier, it's articulation of this problem and knowing the legislation. That's huge.
I couldn't agree more.
I'm going to switch over into something else Rob and I talked about prior to the show. Is he's now having trouble with a particular hearing officer that's making things based on moral and personal choices rather than the law. Are you at a point where you can contribute or comment on that, Rob?
Yeah. Well, it's not going to hurt to mention her name. It's hearing officer Azar. She's one of the 17. It's kind of like a crapshoot. One day she's right on point, and the next day I told my client this afternoon, Azar is a very particular person. She tends to believe, she's a very pro believer of the tenant's stories. The tenant spun a pretty good yarn. The witness that the landlord had was a little unsure of themselves, and it just gave Azar a reason to extend it a little longer than they should have. We got the eviction, the termination date. Of course, Azar at one point said, as a woman, I feel very offended. And she went on this big rant for 10 to 15 minutes. And even when I was talking with the lawyer from a firm in town, he felt the same way about Azar. He says she has no boundaries as far as expressing her personal beliefs or her political boundaries. She has none. She will enter into it. And we're going to be looking at that as a group. And we're going to be filing a pretty serious complaint about her behavior. The nice thing is it's whenever you have a hearing, you can actually get an email from the Residential Tenancy Dispute Service for free. They will send you a copy of the hearing. So I noticed there was a couple ladies this week that had hearings, and I suggested to both of them if they want to review it with me, they can. Get the download, send it to me, I'll review it, and instead of saying, oh, bad job, you didn't get what you want, it's well, we can all learn from it. There's a learning curve in every hearing. I've done so many, I don't even know how many more I've done, but I think every hearing, it's not about the legislation I learn, it's about learning to correspond with that particular type of arbitrator or hearing officer or even tenant. It's a learning curve, and you got to be quick on your feet. I've had tenants or landlords that have made errors, and we disclose everything. I mean, the first thing I said to the hearing officer today is I was unaware of that, but we could talk to the landlord to address that. And after the landlord spoke, it went a lot smoother. But again,
can you guys hear me?
Sorry. Yes.
Oh, you guys can hear me. I'm back. Okay, good.
Yeah, there's 17 arbitrators in Alberta, and they're looking at hiring more now because they're getting so busy.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so we want to make a point. Myself and 2 other law firms and a couple other individuals and people in MLA's office, that we need to address the issue that these guys are all operating on a different set of rules, all of them. So it's every time I enter into a hearing, which I've had so many of lately, it's a different set of rules and a different set of tone, temperament, and that needs to stop. I mean, you're always, Chris, you're in law enforcement, you'll always see that to a slight degree in the courtrooms in Provincial and Court of Queens, but they still all seem to follow the same rules and regulations. Whereas in the residential tenancy dispute, you have to call them on their bullshit right in front of them. They don't like it, but you have to call them. I mean, I had a tenancy officer tell me today, oh, landlords have to make 2 written attempts to do move outs. And I said, whoa, back up. Did you just say written? Like posted on the door type written? And she goes, yeah. And I'm like, please, I'd love to know where it says that in the legislation. And she couldn't answer the question. So afterwards, I sent her an email and said, please explain to me, because here's the legislation right here. It just says they have to make 2 attempts. Nothing about written, nothing about posted, just 2 attempts. So, I mean, you're giving out fake information, and you're lighting a fire where it doesn't have to be, where the tenant at month end will suddenly go, oh, this isn't in writing, I don't have to do this.
All right, Rob, let's slow down. I definitely appreciate, one thing you've done well for us, and I'm going to be like this figment of your imagination because I have no picture because my internet's not very good right now, but you've definitely have moved mountains for us and have given you've called the discrepancies where they lie. But at the same time too, as we somewhat light the RTDRS on fire in the show, they've done a lot of good for us. I want to also
Oh
make
yeah.
light of that. Yeah, okay, that's good. Because a lot of people, because challenge we see when we have this community, we have people coming on asking the questions like, "Oh, I'm going to RTDRS. I didn't get a fair representation. The RTA is biased." When we really break into a lot of those conversations, there's typically some legwork that wasn't done by the landlord at hand, or they didn't interpretate something right. They generally are actually quite fair. And Chris, I know you say this quite a bit. You call it the sport analogy is if you're changing the rules, and then you've made some exceptions, and then you want to go back and then apply the RTA, and it's wholehearted. But if you've set precedents beforehand, it's tough to expect those rules to play in your favor when you've already bent them to begin with. So all I want to go with there is, Rob, as for sure, I appreciate what you've done by stepping on and calling a spade where calling a spade a spade. We definitely appreciate that community, because that's definitely helped us out a lot. But at the same time, I don't want to say the RTDRS is all bad when it really isn't. Generally, when you get the arbitrators, they do a great job with the pay
Oh
rate
no,
and what they have,
I
right?
agree. I agree, MacKenzie. That's just one arbitrator we're dealing with. I'd say since we had that meeting last year, Chris, with the MLA and the minister, I'd say probably 75% of the arbitrators out of those 17 have really stepped up to the plate.
Yeah, and you look at our government performance. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I just want to say, like, I think we can go back to what you just said earlier at the beginning of the show, Rob, was you get a couple bad landlords and it starts to paint all of us. And I think if we dial back this conversation just a hair, we certainly have a couple of hearing officers that are applying personal feelings and personal decisions or morals in how things are handled. Where if we don't want to look at them all the same way. There's 17 of them. They're not all bad. But you know what, Rob's frustrations with what's going on is understandable, because Rob, you're so well read, and you apply the law how it's supposed to be, and you did make some good change. You've gotten some letters from them, and so I would say we're in the 85 to 90% success rate. But again, you get that one or two that come in and you go, what's happening to this program again? And unfortunately, you start to cross over with the same person time and time again. And you wonder, you can't win a lottery, but you can certainly get the bad one every time, which is, doesn't make sense, right?
It happens. I mean, what we can do is we're talking about one arbitrator. And if people do, there is a process that you can do to go complain about it, and they will pull the hearing. And they do review the hearing to find out, and they do contact the arbitrator. So I mean, today's episode, even though the hearing went okay and everything else, I could see that arbitrator's flirting with lines she shouldn't be flirting with. So it's no different than any government official. You have to call them on it. I'm sure that somebody will take the time to sit down and review it with her, and hopefully she can become a better person as an arbitrator that doesn't impose her personal moral beliefs in, because at the end of the day, they're supposed to be impartial. They can't push their own political or moral beliefs in a hearing. She actually said, and I quote, "As a woman, I feel this." And I'm like, whoa, you can't say that. I mean, you could say as a hearing officer, but you can't say as a woman or a man. Suddenly you're becoming impartial to half the genders that are out there.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. Well, that's a good update. I want to switch some gears and let's tackle some questions. Rob, while we do have your expertise in the group, I appreciate you coming on the show and helping out the community, because you're a wealth of knowledge. I want to pick it and see what we can learn from you as we deal with some of these different situations that the tenants or our landlords are dealing with. So I've thrown one right up on the screen here. I don't know who asked it. Maybe Chris, if you're able to dig up a name for me. Would you suggest going to the Queen's Bench or RTDRS simply because of the quality of decisions made by arbitrators versus judges? So which is better, Queen's Bench, RTDRS, or does it depend?
Is that for me there, MacKenzie?
You bet, buddy.
Just in general, Rob.
Well, right now, the provincial courts are closed. Let's just start right at the back end. The Court of Queen's Bench is more expensive. It takes longer to get a hearing. Everything has to be done perfect. The T's have to be crossed, the I's have to be dotted, and you cannot be represented by an agent or an arbitrator. You have to hire a lawyer for Court of Queen's Bench, so it's going to get expensive. You will probably get the same judgment in a QB bench that you would in a provincial court. Now, as far as comparing QB to RTDRS, I don't think that's a really fair comparison because they are following the letter of the law in QB, where that could bite you in the ass. A small mistake. Give you an example, MacKenzie or Chris. Something like not completing a move-in report properly or a move-out report properly. In a provincial court and a RTDRS, the judge or the hearing officer might give you a little bit of leeway because they can bend things a little bit. Whereas a QB judge, it's like this. There is no bending. If you didn't do a move-out report, he'll throw your whole application out the door. No questions asked. He'll look for a reason to shoot it down. And
so a much higher standard is what you're saying there for sure.
Way higher standard and more expensive and takes longer.
And more black and white.
Yeah. It's very, very black and white. And again, most lawyers will ask you for a $1,500 to $2,500 retainer just to take it on.
And what about the and you mentioned Queen's Bench and provincial court, so there's actually a difference there as well. So what's the differences there, Rob?
A provincial court is somewhere where a person can go in and do self-representation or agent representation comfortably. A judge will hold your hand a little bit. Let's say I was taking Chris to court as a tenant. A judge is going to look out for Chris's rights and my rights. Whereas in a QB court, the judge, that's not his job there. That's the lawyer, the agent, or the representation's job to look out for their rights. There is no gray area. And if you don't know what you're doing, you'll hear about it from a QB judge. He will reprimand you. He might ask you to refile. He could throw the whole thing out. Your packages have to be precise. Whereas with provincial and RTDRS, you could just submit all your evidence together and label it page 1 through 50, and the judge will let it slide. So with the arbitrator in the RTDRS, in a court of Queens, no. Those guys want section 1A referred to legislation this, how it applies to that. He doesn't want you to go over things twice. He doesn't let your closing argument better be right on the precise money. And QB judges, you have to prepare your own order at the end. They're not going to prepare it for you. He'll turn to either the agent or the other lawyer and say, who's preparing this order that I'm going to sign? Whereas in a provincial and arbitration, they prepare the order and register it with QB.
Love it. Okay.
Well, one last point about QB. I think the only time that I would stress that QB is a place to go is, one, if it's a human rights issue. So if you don't want to go to QB, don't bring up human rights. 2, it's over $50,000, or it's so complicated of an issue like the colonies. Chris, remember that one? One of the colonies here, outright colonies in Alberta, is having to go to QB because the tenant said he was in a rent own. It doesn't exist. There's no evidence to exist. But just because the tenant claims that there was a rent own conversation, it becomes a land dispute. So it can't be heard in the RTDRS or provincial. It has to go to QB because it's a land dispute. So that's how smart tenants are getting right now. They know what things to say to make it more expensive and more drawn out for landlords. So having your paperwork submitted and presented correctly is so important nowadays, because the internet has made, I was talking to my partner about it tonight. I don't think it's making them smarter. I think it's making them more, what's the word I'm looking for? Devious or conniving in some circumstances. You know, because they're knowing how to exploit those gray areas.
Rob or Mac, let's put that next question up there.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna go to one. I've got a bunch queued up here, Chris. So let's take one of those ones here. I found some kind of good ones here. Let me put up this one here. I think I've seen this one asked a few times, so I'm gonna share the screen. I don't want to butcher his name. Suzuki Jinder. I've negotiated a rent increase of $100 per month with my existing tenant of a couple of years. I will adjust the rent amount in the upcoming lease renewal. Is it typical to keep the damage deposit in sync with the rent in case of a rent increase? In other words, should I get another $100 from the tenant to add to the existing damage deposit to match rent? Anything else I need to consider? So I've seen this asked. I even thought about this the first time as well. I'm not entirely sure on this. So
easy question.
Give it a Rob.
Under no circumstances can you change the security deposit without designing a whole new lease. If the security deposit was $1,000 5 years ago, and you've raised the rent 5 times to $1,500, the security deposit has to stay the same. You cannot change it under any circumstance.
So when I go and renew leases, I always do a complete brand new lease. I find it better because then if I'm doing changes to my lease, those are then brought on to the tenant. If in that situation, does that change the ball then? The game where
No,
I could?
not at all. You can redo the whole lease, but the security deposit still falls back on that original lease. So if you guys entered into a RTDRS or a provincial or QB, they're going to go back. They're going to say, where's the original lease every time? Because they want to go back to find out how much it was given and if there's any interest acquired from that date on that amount. You cannot change the security deposit under any circumstances. Kind of expanding on that, if they decide to get a pet, well, you can do a pet deposit or you can change the rent for a pet. But I mean, when it comes to security deposit, once it's set, that's it for the entire duration of their tenancy.
Simple.
I have a question, if I could.
Trish. Absolutely.
If you've got, if you have the tenant paying pet rent and you've got the security deposit, do you include the pet rent in the security deposit? Let's say the rent is $1,600 and the pet is $500 or $50.
Yeah.
Can you, 500.
That's a big bet.
In your security deposit, I've always been curious about this. Can you put the pet rent in with that so they pay $1,650 for?
What I do if we were doing it, we could have 2 instances: adding a pet later, or having a pet right off the bat. Let's stick with your $1,600. I think they're both the same. I'll get to why. Let's say it's just let's just pick a pit bull just for fun. You're adding $50 a month in rent and a non-refundable pet deposit. Completely acceptable. I keep seeing the same question arise. I've looked into it 10 different ways from Sunday, and I keep coming back with the same answer. If they rent $1,600 and they want to get a pit bull, and it's not in the original lease, you can negotiate whatever you like. You can negotiate an addendum to it saying, we're going to pay $50 a month more because we have a pet. It's just like adding a roommate. They're adding more costs, more wear and tear to the unit, whether it's over the normal wear and tear. That's what the pet deposit is for. I do non-refundable pet deposits because I can tell you right now, I'm in my backyard right now and I have a dog. And I can tell you, by the time I get my backyard green and pearly back, it's going to be, the snow will be hitting in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a non-refund. And I explained it to them. It's a non-refundable. That doesn't mean that they get to trash the house. I explained that to them, that it says right in here that you will be held accountable for anything beyond normal wear and tear by your pet. And the $50 a month is just because they've added another roommate. It's if you had a 1-bedroom apartment and your boyfriend moved in and you want to get permission, my negotiation is, well, you've rented this bachelor suite. It's not big enough. Come to a 1-bedroom where you'll charge $50 more rent. And if you want to get a pet, we should get you a bigger place. It's not only are you expanding the lease, you're expanding the parameters of their living arrangements. So I always try and accommodate them best. I mean, some girl that's living in a bachelor suite wants to get 3 cats and a dog. I'm like, no, can't happen.
Yeah, that's not crazy. So to add on to what Trish was asking, then, so I want to be clear on this because I'm not now. Yeah. So let's talk 2 situations really quickly here. So existing tenant comes in halfway through a lease at some point in the future, says, I want a pet. They agree to pay $50 per month for a pet. Well, we already answered this question in the sense that you don't change the damage deposit. The damage deposit is whatever it is originally. Okay, let's go back to the other scenario. It's brand new setup. You have it advertised for $1,000. Pets are negotiable. Someone says, I'm interested. They agree to a $50 a month pet fee. What do we collect for our damage deposit? $1,000 or $1,050?
Oh, I do it completely separate. So you've got a 5-page lease like those standard ones you see in Alberta. Yeah, security deposit's $1,000. I would do a completely new addendum on the back of the lease that describes everything that's required in there, of what kind of pet, who the veterinarian, describe the animal, and then it says non-refundable pet deposit and a $50 a month increase in your rent because they're paying basically for this addendum. It's a separate part of the lease.
So would it? Oh, okay. So when you say addendum, we're adding on more legal documents to our original lease, or would we just do a completely separate lease agreement or separate contract for the pet only? Does that really matter, or is that
no? The addendum is just an add-on to a contract, but it carries its own separate properties. That's why it's an addendum.
Oh.
You don't want to
Okay.
start handwriting in things and changing things. I
No.
mean, it just turns into a nightmare. Addendums are the best way to go because you can date it, you could sign it, they sign it, and there's a date at the top when this took place. So if
Okay.
it does go to court a year down the road, or you do have a dispute, you can pull out that addendum and say no. I mean, I had somebody recently that their dog died, and they called me up and I said, I'm not planning on getting another dog. I've been paying $750 instead of $700. And I'm like, great, I'll drop your rent and I'll put that your animal's deceased on there. And oh, well, what about my pet deposit? I said, your non-refundable pet deposit? And they're like, oh yeah, that's right, non-refundable.
Interesting. So I think maybe I'm already doing that in a sense. I have my lease, and then I just did this recently for a tenant. They wanted a pet. I eventually agreed. I just did a separate pet lease that actually a couple of us landlords got together. It's completely separate. I don't make any reference from one document to the other. They're just completely separate. But when I collect my rent, I collect all of the amounts owing.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
It's a very popular question on all the sites, whether it be the landlord sites, tenant sites, landlord and tenant sites, and it's always up for dispute. I mean, at the end of the day, I usually just copy and paste the user-friendly guide for tenants and landlords and slap the legislation for better clarification, and everybody gets real quiet in these pages after that.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so this is a good segue. We're talking about lease renewals. The next question that I had queued up here for you guys, I'm going to throw this to Trish first, then I'll get Rob and Chris comment on it. Rachel asks here, is there a specific form to renew a lease, or do I have to go through the whole process again and a whole new contract or a whole new lease referral? So I'm always interested in hearing what people say on this, because let me just get that picture removed so we're not so distracted, because there's two trains of thought here at CAP of pros and cons of doing both ways. So Trish, what do you do when you renew a tenant? Do you do a brand new lease, or do you do a special form that continues the existing lease?
I am constantly changing my lease, especially being involved with this page and listening to different things that people are saying, because there's always little nuggets of things that you can add to your lease, or things that you find out from Rob are not really legal. And so I always send them a new lease, but my houses are in MacKenzie Town and I live in Cougar Ridge, so it's a long drive. For my lease renewal, I use DocuSign. I don't get it signed in person.
It's the same here. I've been all digital as well, but you're doing a completely brand new lease, just new different dates. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just write in there, I just carry over the damage deposit that they've written. On this date, I received this much, and I've never had an issue. Just recently, one of the things that I added in was, we use the Alberta or the Landlord Credit Bureau.
Yep.
So I needed to add that in. So it's always a new lease.
Absolutely. Chris, when you do your renewals, do you do a brand new lease, or do you do a continuation with a form?
What's happening with me now is I've updated my leases to something a little bit simpler, and Rob's going to like this one. My former partner was a lawyer, so you knew how many pages the lease was, right, Rob?
So you killed a small tree every time you got a new tenant?
Yeah. So through this page and making my connections and business connections, I found a much simpler way of doing it, and I've tweaked it, of course, to fit my needs. And so if I renew a lease, or sorry, if I extend to another term, I slipped a new lease in, and with the changes. Now, I was talking to a gentleman today. He bought a fourplex in Ponoka, and he's asking me for a little bit of help checking up on things because he's a out of town landlord. And I said, "Is this your first rental property?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, do you have a lease?" "Well, I'm going to use a lease that the fellows have." And I said, "Oh, are you going to get your own together?" He says, "Yeah, we're going to get our own together." I said, "Okay, that's good. Have you thought about marijuana issues?" "Nope." "Have you thought about pet issues?" "No." "Have you thought about smoking issues?" "No." Have you thought about? So anyway, if he's watching the show, I certainly embellished that a little bit, but the point is that there's things that we don't think about, and being new landlords, this is a great page to come to figure out what we need to have in those. and what you need to watch for. Especially, the marijuana thing. People think, well, you mean it's just smoking? No, there's the growing it. There's the moisture that's in your house. There's the smell that's in your house, and on it goes. Rob, I'm sure you've come across some pretty crazy ops. So,
oh yeah, 500 plant grow ops legal in your home, legal. Because the federal government, I mean, I don't want to get off topic, but I'll sum this one up.
You'll get off topic. Guaranteed you'll get off topic.
20 seconds, Rob, go.
20 seconds, stay on point.
The federal government can give a legal grow up for up to 500 plants without notifying the municipality, provincial, or the landlord.
Can we
so
avoid
you
this?
need to make sure what, Rob?
That you have an ironclad, no marijuana grow, no marijuana consumption on the property. Period, in every lease, because even if you catch them, the RCMP won't go get them because they've got a federal grow license. I just had one, 475 plants they had in the unit.
Is that the one in
And
Calgary?
all we could do was evict them. Had to go through the whole process. At the end of the day, it would have been nice if the RCMP could have went after them, but they gave them a legal grow up to grow 475 plants every 3 to 4 months. You would have to smoke 100 grams a day to do that for personal use. Can't tell me something's not broken with the federal government there.
Whoops.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and okay, let's go back to the original question here. So Rob, from a legal standpoint, from your experience, what is better, pros or cons of going from a lease or from a new lease to a new lease, or do you do a form to continue the existing lease and a renewal?
Well, there's two ways. You've got a fixed lease and you've got a
month to month.
Well, no, not a month to month, but a periodic.
Periodic? Yep.
Yeah, a periodic. I've been using periodic leases for years, but I've got ironclad leases. But if I'm going to do any amendments to the lease, I always have a big reminder on my computer saying, hey, this person's lease is coming up. Do I want to do a rent increase before 90 days? Do I want to add an addendum to this lease? Do I want to end the lease? You want to have something in place that sends you a reminder 90 days before a fixed or a periodic lease. So you can make those decisions. And again, when we have the RTDRS, they don't quite follow all the rules. So they kind of like, well, maybe you could have given them more notice, or maybe you could have done this, or maybe you could have done that. So I always just err on the side of caution. Whenever there's a rent increase or a lease renewal or the lease is coming up, whether it be periodic or fixed, I give them a 90 days heads up. Say, hey, it's coming up. Would you like to sit down and discuss things? So as far as renewing a fixed lease, yeah, if it was a fixed lease, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do a brand new lease from start to finish. It might be the same paperwork. It might be the same thing, everything. Or maybe I'm just say to them like, hey, you know what? I'm not really feeling it with you. Maybe we'll go month to month for a couple months to see how things are going. And you don't have to put a lease in writing month to month. If you're on a fixed lease and you want to go month to month, you can just do that verbally, or even just make a quick addendum saying we've decided to go month to month. You're not obligated to sign another 1-year lease.
Totally. No, yeah, you can.
What if you have on your? Oh, sorry. What if you have on your lease that this lease will not go to a month-to-month lease at the end of the term? So that's what mine says.
You're saying you want it terminated. So if we went January 1st to December 31st, then I would remind them every month, 3 months beforehand, your lease is coming up. Your lease is coming up. Don't wait till, I hear this all the time from people on our chat group. Oh, the lease is up next week. I'm just going to tell them I'm not renewing. Great. Good luck at seeing in court. Because, we have to take that higher road as landlords. They're tenants. They're buying something from us. We're running a business. We have to take the higher standard and give them as much. Hell, 3 months, I just err on the side of caution because you never know who you'll get for an arbitrator. So I just do the 90 days. I'd say September, I guess be October, November, December. So yeah, October 1st, I'm calling my tenant up, end of September. Hey, your lease is coming up. We should sit down and talk about things. You want to have a quick conference? We'll discuss what you want to do. Even if I know I'm ending it December 31st, I want them to know that I'm ending it because they all have the same thing. I didn't understand it when I signed that.
Totally. Let's get some live questions coming on. I'm just going through, and we actually got a bunch, which I think some are really good. So the one I saw here, which we had 30-degree weather in May and now June. I'm not going to complain. Got a tenant who's just reached out about adding a portable AC unit to the window. Haven't had someone ask me this before. Is there anything specific I should keep in mind before approving it? So I already know from personal experience the electrical bill is going to do a big change here. So, Rob, you're in this situation. How do you handle this?
Well, I could tell by my partner to the right there, her expression, it's a 50-50 crapshoot. I've seen these things fall out and hit people. And if you agreed to have it in an apartment and it lands on someone's decks and does damage, the landlord's liable. So I always tell people, if you're going to install something like that, it has to be professionally installed. And I give them the contractor who I want to install it. And the contractor, his name's on that. Because I've seen people install them with cardboard and paper clips, literally paperclip, cardboard, and duct tape. That's a nightmare waiting to happen. Or they're plugging into an outlet that can handle it, and suddenly you're getting a phone call at 2 a.m. where, oh, my fridge stopped working. I can't get any lights in this. Well, yeah, because you're running this 1965 ridiculous air conditioner that's beat up and not working, and it's tripping the breaker. Now suddenly you're looking at $200-300 to fix your breaker.
Okay, so what if they come back and they say, well, Rob, it's actually a portable one. It sits on the floor. I just have to put a hose up to the window. Are you okay with that?
Now, here's the kicker. When they say hole up to the window, guess what? There's a screen there. I don't know how many landlords in this group right now are going, oh, what the hell is that 6-inch hole through my screen? And that first thing the tenant says when they're moving up, oh, well, remember, you said I could put an air conditioner in there. And suddenly they have an argument. So if you are going to do something like that, again, make an addendum. Just don't say, oh, yeah, it's fine. Make an addendum. Send it to them. Have some regulations written out. I mean, I think that's a great question because it comes up every year, time of the year this year. I personally hate them. But you know what? If someone's going to take the time and said, hey, Rob, I want to put this thing in, great. I say it can't be any wider than one side of your window on a sliding window. 2, it has to be professionally installed. 3, you can't affix any nails or screws to the side of the building. It must be freestanding and installed correctly. Now, a contractor that knows what he's doing can do that. But I'll tell you, some of the home jobs I've seen are just scary.
So what about utilities now? All right, we've had a high draw appliance, and we can expect utilities to go up. Can we do anything about that?
You mean if the landlord's paying for the utilities?
Well, let's just talk some different situations. Let's say
if the landlord's paying for the utilities, I would say flat out that I have in mind, if it's in my leases, if the landlord's not including the utilities, I have a little clause in there that says any high increase in the utilities that's beyond the year-long average, a tenant will have to cover those costs. And I give reasons why: air conditioners, excessive electronic use, maybe somebody's just letting fans run 24/7. They need to understand, especially in this day and age where we're all paying ridiculous carbon tax on everything. I mean, if they're paying their own power, all the power to them.
So, yeah, 100%. All right, let's go quickly. Trish, how would you deal with someone requesting an AC unit?
Nope. Actually, one of my houses has an AC unit. Actually, and then the other one is geothermal. So
nice.
One of the other ones is geothermal, so it stays the same temperature all year round. But I do have in my lease absolutely no window air conditioners, period.
Just again to what Rob's mentioned about it being a legal liability.
Well, because I average out the utilities and collect the utility bills ahead of time.
Yep.
And if it goes up like that, it's not fair to the downstairs tenant to be paying for that in any way. Because all of my houses are suited.
Yeah, if it's up and down suites, no, that's a big no. Because that's not fair. Somebody's paying the power, the gas, and then it's a fight. Just say, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so my rule is no. I have found one in a house, and it was because the tenant had diabetes and they needed it. But I had to turn around and back charge them for the extra utilities, which they didn't appreciate and they fought me on, but
it's tough. Yeah, exactly. And Chris, do you deal with this with tenants wanting to add an AC unit to the house? How do you handle that?
Well, as a matter of fact, I do have one, and I noticed last year I went against my own grain, and I said, do you mind if I put a little air conditioner in? It's just one of those ones that sit on the floor and you run the hose up. And I go, yeah, sure. And then I watched the electricity go up, and I'm going, you know what? I gotta pay attention to this because my utilities went up on that place, and right now we're in a little bit of a heat wave again. So I know darn well that air conditioner is going, and I'm trying to think how I didn't allow myself to get compensated for it. So when that lease renewal comes up in January of next year, I certainly am going to. They're going to get a little bit of increase, and as a matter of fact, I think that tenant has somebody living there now. So these are little things that you think they can sneak by you, but they don't, right? Or they do, but if you're not paying attention. So I've got to address a couple issues, and an air conditioner, they run 24/7 pretty much when it gets hot, so they get expensive.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, totally. I would agree with those little statements. Definitely the liability side of the window ones. I don't want any damage. Like you said, Rob, have a professional do it. Great tips there. And then cover your backside with the increase in utilities. Have a way to back charge that. I actually have pulled my utilities out into its. Oh, as I've learned today in the show, an addendum. I've just basically had all these separate leases or contracts, but I have same thing. I say, hey, if this bill jumps, I will give you a 30 to 60-day notice and increase accordingly. And I have that in a separate contract. So fantastic. We've got some other questions here. I've never really had this question or seen on the
I
page.
don't think you should put that question up.
Okay.
Oh,
done.
I want to see it now.
No.
Yeah, no.
I
It's
don't
not a
even.
good question.
No, any people can answer it off screen. I don't get that one. I honestly don't get it. Let's move on to the next one.
Okay, fair enough. And I've got
I
a
think
couple
it's
more.
a rude joke.
Yeah.
Oh, one of those. Okay.
Yeah, it's off taste.
You'll have to send that one to me later, Chris.
Yeah, I'll text it to you.
You're not missing on much. Okay, so let's grab this one. So Nancy writes, it is the second time I'm asking this question as I didn't get the clear answer I was looking for, so I'll try to be more precise. If I've evicted tenants on April 21st, their rent is $12.48 a month. Can I put on my ledger that for $12.48 for April, or do I have to prorate per day, which would be $873.60 until April 1st? She can't find this answer in law. So, Rob, I'm going to really just throw this right at you. It's kind of your ball, your court.
Can you go through that for me one more time? Because I can't read it because the print is so small.
Sure. Yeah, I'll paraphrase. So she's evicted a tenant on April 21st. She wants to collect rent for the month of April. Can she collect a full month's rent of, say, $1,000, or since it's April 21st, does she have to prorate the $1,000 to the cost per day and then times it by 21 days?
Okay. There's actually two parts to this. I mean, if the tenant moved out on the 21st and the move out was good and the security deposit's 100% refundable and the place looked immaculate, yes, the 21st is all you can collect to. That's cut and dry. Now, if she went in there on the 21st and all the walls need to be painted, the carpets need to be cleaned, there's a bunch of repairs to be done, and it took the tenant 9 days to complete, or it took the landlord 9 days to complete it, you could say, I'm sorry, but due to the condition that I took it in on the 21st, it took me 9 days to get these things done. And it's an arguable point in a forum, whether it be a courtroom hearing or QB.
Interesting. Okay.
I've seen that happen lots.
I did not know that. So I'll go back to the question. She starts it off with she evicted tenants and they were out on the 21st. So the tenants got removed early because of an eviction. Does that change your answer?
Again, it all depends on how they left the suite.
So condition of the suite plays a big critical factor, because if you have to get back to market ready rentability or market ready condition, and it's not, and you have that downtime, that lead time to get it back up, you can argue that cost of doing business.
I had one last week that was we were arguing damages after the fact. Their eviction took place on the 10th. We were asking for the full month of February, and the arbitrator, I believe it was Harriet, said, well, why should I do this? And I said, well, why don't we revisit this after we show you the work that had to be completed? After we summed up about $4,500 to $5,000 in damages, trying to get contractors, trying to get it all done, he was like, well, stop there. I totally understand why you're asking for the month of February. I'm going to give the rent from the 10th to the 28th of February, because the one contractor said it took him 9 days to paint the walls because they were in such bad condition. And then we had to clean the carpets, and then there was toilets that had to replace, windows that were missing. He didn't even question it at that point. But you have to be able to prove it if it goes into a courtroom.
Love it. That's you know what? Then I always learn something new in this show, Rob. You're a fountain of knowledge, and this conversation happens quite often, and then we talk about you can only prorate up to that point. Also, if it's a happy situation, but I see that as well where someone's had to remove a tenant. Most times, damages and not paying rent, and especially in the case of damages, they got to do work to get that suite back up to market condition. So, I will make sure we hammer that point home that you brought home there, Rob. That's a great tip.
It's a good question. It really is.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything you two, Chris or Trish, you want to add on to that? I'm going to queue up another question here.
No, we're good.
Okay. We'll do one more, and then we'll probably call that for the show. You know what? I took this one, Rob. Let's do a quick. It's pet fees. We've already kind of hammered that one out. This one. Hopefully you guys can read this. What happens if a tenant refuses to sign the move-out report at the end of a lease?
Want me to go with this one?
Rob,
Yes.
buddy, I kind of queued this one up on a tee for you.
Okay, so if you're using the proper move outs, the ones that the most regular ones used are supplied by the.
Sorry, Rob, you are really
We
hard to
can't hear
hear.
him.
Yeah,
sorry.
did you?
Is that better?
No, you sound like you're speaking through a toilet paper tube.
Hold on one sec.
Okay,
One
you do a reset.
No, I'll just hop inside. Maybe we're just getting a little bad reception out here.
It's just like your mic did something different or something. I can't.
Yeah.
Like you're coming in clear. You're just your audio is distorted.
How's that? Any better?
Not really.
Hold on.
Maybe turn yourself on and off, or
Yeah, you're froze up now. Mac, go back over and read the question again.
Yeah, you bet. Okay.
Heard
So
How's that?
so you're loud and clear. Okay, so I'll reread the question. What happens if a tenant refuses to sign the move-out report?
Okay,
Hey,
so
Rob.
if you're using the right documents, there is a spot on the back side that talks about that. So if a tenant refuses to sign a move-out report, you say that's fine. It's okay. I can sign on your behalf. Just make them aware that I'm not sure. You could pick them up all over Alberta. Community information referral. You can order them through certain sites, but there's a spot that says the tenant does not want to sign it. So you sign it saying the tenant refused to sign it. All you do at that point, as soon as they leave, what I do when a tenant refuses to sign it, I methodically do a video walkthrough and I point out all the things that said the tenants have just left. It's 1:07 p.m. You can see them leaving. They're not happy with what I wrote down. So I'm just going to go over the move-out report and I spend 2 to 3 minutes doing a quick video and make sure in the video that you're not doing this. You know, give you an example what I've seen people do. Oh, you see that? You see that? Oh, and you see this? And you see this? Literally, if there's something that you want to illustrate whether it goes to arbitration is you look at it and say, oh, okay, you see that hole on the wall? The one that's like 3 inches by 3 inches on the west wall, like give it as much description as you can.
Yeah.
And hold the camera on it for a couple of seconds because judges and arbitrators are like, well, what was that? And and then go back after that and take pictures. And what is it called? Is it called a carpenter square? You know, the little 90-degree square that's like 2 feet long by 16 inches?
You need context in the pictures.
Exactly. Gives contrast. Put that thing on the wall, put it on the floor. Even if it's the floor is completely destroyed, get yourself a graph map, you know, like the little squares.
Yeah.
Map on your floor. I had one recently, I'm going to do another day, but what we did was hardwood floors and we graphed out everything. So when it goes to court, there's 17 marks on this area. And when you do it like that, the arbitrator's like, oh, that thing's totally destroyed. Well, yeah, but if you just took a couple of pictures, they're like, it doesn't look so bad.
Such great points, Rob. And I know and you guys have talked about this before, and it goes back to, I know we had this conversation about damages on wall, and you'd be like, well, you took a picture, but I'm looking at the picture. I don't know if there's a 3 inch or 3.5 feet across the wall, and it's been dragged. Like you can't tell. So having that context and taking the time, like you said, with the video. So tenant refuses. You've noted that. You've got the proper move out report. That's the sign. You have that written down, and then you go right on to full. Let's go. Get as much documentation and evidence as possible. You start a video walkthrough in very detailed walkthrough, pause, take pictures, hold up stuff inside the video that give context to the size of the damage and quantity in the area, and you be very descriptive and take your time.
Even smells. If you're smelling a cat odor, literally, I'll give you an example. I had a court case a couple weeks ago where I went around with the tenant and I went, okay, we're going into the room where it smells, and I'm like, it's pretty gross in here. I can only stay in here a few minutes. I put my hand right on the carpet, I rubbed it in, put it up to my face, and you could see the reaction in my face. And I said to the I even said to the arbitrator, I said, if you like, if you go to section 13B, where I pulled up the corner of the carpet and you could see the lines in the corner going from the urine, I says, we can go that far. And 9 times out of 10, the arbitrator's like, no, I saw the video, we're good.
Oh man, that's batting for the fences. But hey, like again, if you've got thousands and thousands of dollars of damage because of neglect and unauthorized pets and just a tenant not unfortunately behaving, that's the stuff you got to do. That's I would probably go that length. I would not want to do it right now, but I would possibly go to that length. So.
Yeah, you have to. I had a staff member actually start dry heaving because it was so bad. If anybody's ever run across fruit flies, how bad the smell is that causes thousands of fruit flies, and she was gagging in the video. And 10 seconds into that, the judge was like, "Nope, we're good. I don't need to watch any more of this."
Yeah, so show a little emotion of what you're looking at.
Emotion is important.
Yeah. Yeah. Not we should probably clarify that, Rob. Not emotion in the sense that you want to bash the tenant. That doesn't do anything good, but just factual statements that you're going through and documenting evidence, but show the emotion, like this is really smelly, this is really disgusting.
Just to clarify that, what I meant by emotion, I had a case the other day where the tenant made some ridiculous claims of racism, and the owner was actually from East India, and when the arbitrator Azar came back on, said, wow, I cannot believe these accusations, this is horrible, what do you have to say, Mr. Bonham? I said, you know what, I think the landlord should speak to this. And she did speak to it, and she spoke with emotion, and she spoke from her heart, and it swayed the arbitrator. I was, okay, not only do you have evidence to support it, but I heard you speak, I heard the emotion in your voice, how offended you were by these accusations. I believe you. Sometimes emotion is good as long as you're speaking on how it makes you feel, not projecting it on the tenant.
Yeah. Yes, devil in the details. I really like that. That's a good clarification, Rod, there. All right, well, we're a little past the top of the hour. We got a little bit slow. We got these. This is like, I love this meat and potato stuff. And Rob, just so detailed in answering his questions. This is the nitty gritty part of the landlording that I really enjoy. And you know what, Christine, she shared a good tip here I want to add in too. I have another person come in, have a third party. If you have a friend or a neighbor or someone that can come in and be on video, especially if you're doing that documentation, say, it really smells like smoke in here, my eyes are watering, or I don't even have asthma and I can't breathe in the house, kind of thing. That third-party validation takes it to another level, especially with intangibles that you can't capture on film, like smells, for example. So, do you guys got any final points as we wrap up the show? Any kind of tidbits you want to highlight, Chris? You're saying no there. Trish, thank you so much for spending the time and coming in last minute. I appreciate it.
Thanks. I just want to drive home the importance of having a really good team with you in your real estate journey. I just had a turnover yesterday, and I had a very quick 12-hour turnover. I had to have it painted, carpets cleaned, my cleaner and everything. And once you have these relationships with people, it's just makes things so much easier that you can do it when you're in a really big hurry. So that's
and that confidence that you can execute too.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And I had to sell a condo right now, and I had a contractor that I just said, hey, I got these small things came in. He did it in 2 days. It was like 2 hours of him charging me out, and it was just handled to meet condition removal. And I was like, perfect, because I wasn't even in the city at the time. So I totally agree with you there, Trish. Have those protected. Rob, have guys like Rob here. We got our other eviction experts. You know what? As much as I know, if I got into a hole and I was going to RTDRS, I would still hire Rob. I'd still hire Don over up in Edmonton Eviction, one of these guys, because I would learn. I learned so much from the process of listening to how these guys articulate the problems in the court. They know who are the big players are, the characteristics of these arbitrators and how to approach the right wording to get your point across and in the most impressed upon manner. And you know what, the devil's in the details and how you present that evidence too. While I again know I need to be detailed, how you lay that information out is just, it's so important. And you know what, that typically your guys' charges, I'm just going to ballpark it, isn't around that 1 month's rent, give or take, but you guys will come in and save 2 to 3 months of missed rent and damages. It's, you think up front you can hammer it out for $75 and do some paperwork, and then you quickly realize you're 3 months into it and the problems really grow. So pro teams, your accountants, your bookkeepers, your eviction experts, this business really requires a team to come out and even my partner Chris, he's multitasking right now, and we still get these videos done. So it sets him on the spot. But anyways, we'll wrap it up there. Rob, thank you, buddy, for coming on. Your expertise is always greatly appreciated, and I'm always learning something new when I get to pick your brain on these shows.
It's appreciated to have the opportunity. One thing I would like to add that I've been really pressing on with all landlords is whenever you get into a part where you're having to arbitrate or you're having to mediate or there's a concern, the biggest term I've been using in the last 3 to 6 months is landlords, be reasonable. This is a business. These are clients. You have to be reasonable, because if you're not reasonable, it's going to come back to bite you in the ass every time.
Your tenants are your customers. Treat them like that.
100%. Yeah. There's a time you treat them like gold. You treat them like gold until it's time not to be treated like gold, and that's where you take steps to remove them.
Yeah.
Fantastic way to end the show. Thank you, guys. I'm gonna march us down and put on a little bit of an exit video, and you guys stay in the back room. We'll have a quick chat after the show. I want to say thank you again, and we'll see you guys next time. This is the only show dedicated to landlord in Alberta, the Alberta Landlord Shoptalk show. I'm your host, MacKenzie Wilson. Alongside me, my partner up in the top right-hand corner, Chris Noble. We'll see you guys next time.